Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. I found myself in a world where every trace of humanity seemed erased. Names were replaced by numbers, voices by commands, and futures by the constant shadow of death. The days blurred into each other, marked by hunger, exhaustion, and the sound of boots on frozen ground. Yet even in that grim and hollow place, I began to notice something strange. Some men gave up quickly, collapsing under the weight of despair. Others, despite everything, held on, not with strength, but with something quieter. They remembered a face, a sentence, a task unfinished. They walked through the same mud and cold, yet carried themselves differently. I realized then that suffering itself is not the end. The way we respond to it, that is where meaning begins. Stripped of everything, I was forced to confront the one thing no one could take from me, my inner freedom. And in that confrontation, I understood life is never made unbearable by circumstances alone, but by a loss of meaning and purpose. Even there, I could choose. Phase 1, the period following admission. The train came to a jarring stop in the dead of night. Inside the sealed cattle car, dozens of men and women stood pressed together, too tightly packed to sit or even shift. The stench of unwashed bodies, urine, and stale fear filled every inch of the air. We had been traveling for what felt like forever, though none of us knew exactly how long it had been. Our sense of time had dissolved. No food, no water, no daylight. Just the sound of iron wheels screeching on rails, and the knowledge that our lives were about to change forever. When the doors finally slid open, they didn't open to freedom or to clarity. They opened to chaos. Blinding searchlights flooded the platform outside. Dogs barked furiously. Men in uniforms shouted in German. It was all so abrupt, so loud, so overwhelming that it didn't feel real. It felt like a nightmare we couldn't wake from. We were ordered off the train next, stumbling as our legs struggled to support us. Some collapsed immediately. Others tried to help their loved ones, but the shouting pushed us forward. There was no time for goodbyes. It was on that platform that Part 1, Experiences in a Concentration Camp, Phase 1, the period following admission. The train came to a jarring stop in the dead of night. Inside the sealed cattle car, the suffocating silence was broken only by shallow breathing, muffled sobs, and the occasional clatter of metal as someone shifted in place. We had been packed in so tightly that movement was nearly impossible. Men stood pressed against men, women clung to children, and no one knew where we were headed. The air was thick, warm from body heat, and fouled by the reek of sweat, fear, and waste. The small vents in the sides of the car let in only slivers of light and hope. Days and nights blended into a single, endless stretch of uncertainty. Then suddenly, the doors slid open with a metallic groan. Cold air rushed in, shouts in a foreign language cut through the night, dogs barked savagely, and bright lights flooded the interior of the car, burning our eyes that had adjusted to darkness. We were ordered out, schnell, schnell, and stumbled down from the train onto a stone platform under the harsh gaze of the SS. This was Auschwitz. We didn't know what Auschwitz was. We didn't know that we had just arrived at the most infamous death camp in the Nazi Empire. To us, it was just another stop, another unknown. Some had heard rumors, others hoped it was a labor camp, a place to wait out the war. But those illusions died quickly on that platform. There, in the middle of the crowd, stood a man in a clean uniform with gloves and a stick. He didn't yell or strike anyone. He merely pointed, left or right. That simple motion, a flick of his hand, decided the fate of everyone who passed. One direction meant life, at least temporarily. The other meant immediate death. Parents were separated from children, husbands from wives. I saw an elderly man hesitate for a moment, confused by the orders. A guard stepped forward and struck him with the butt of his rifle, then shoved him left. That was the last time I saw him. I was pushed to the right. Later, I learned what that meant. Those sent to the right were to be registered for work. Those to the left were sent to the gas chambers. No explanations were given. There was no time to think. It all happened in seconds, a blur of movement and emotion. I was separated from my mother, my brother, and my wife. I didn't know it then, but I would never see them again. We were stripped of our belongings immediately. All watches, jewelry, money, documents, gone. The guards told us we would be given everything back later. A lie. We were marched into a processing area where the transformation from human to prisoner began. Clothes were torn from our bodies, heads were shaved, every hair, including eyebrows and body hair, removed. We were sprayed with disinfectant, doused with cold water, and thrown a bundle of ragged clothes, prison uniforms already worn by others who had died. There were no socks, no underwear, no explanation. We looked at each other and barely recognized our own friends and family. Faces were pale and hollow. The hairless heads made us look like wax figures. Our eyes were wide with fear and disbelief. We were no longer doctors, students, musicians, teachers. We were now numbers. I became 119104. Shock is the only word that can describe those first few hours. A complete mental shutdown. Our minds could not process the reality. The human psyche, when exposed to overwhelming trauma, protects itself by going numb. I saw men who had just lost their wives, their children, their homes, and they showed no emotion. They stared forward, silent, detached, as if it hadn't happened at all. But that was how we survived the first phase, by not feeling. This emotional death was necessary. It was the first step to physical survival. Grief, rage, despair, those came later. But in the beginning, they would have killed us. Those who cried were beaten. Those who resisted were shot. There was no time to grieve, no space to process. You either adjusted instantly or you died. On our first night, we were herded into barracks, wooden huts filled wall to wall with bunk beds, each crammed with as many as 12 men. There were no mattresses, only wooden slats and a few thin, filthy blankets. We lay there, not sleeping, just trying to breathe in a room that stank of urine, sweat, and unwashed flesh. Lice crawled over our skin. Rats scurried across the floor. There were no toilets, only a bucket in the corner that overflowed quickly. Hunger began almost immediately. We were given a piece of black bread, dry, hard, barely edible, and a ladle of thin soup. The soup had no vegetables, no meat, just cloudy water with the flavor of decay. Some refused to eat it at first, repulsed. A few days later, they would fight over it. By the second or third day, many of us had already stopped asking questions. The mind retreats into a kind of primitive focus. Stay alive. Avoid the guards. Eat what you can. Keep your shoes. Try to sleep. Do not speak unless spoken to. Roll call came every morning and evening, hours of standing in freezing wind or rain, sometimes completely naked, while names were called or numbers checked. Anyone who collapsed during roll call was beaten or dragged away, presumed dead. The camp was run by a strange hierarchy. Some prisoners were elevated to the status of capos, prisoners in charge of other prisoners. Many were more brutal than the guards themselves. Their survival depended on keeping order, which often meant cruelty. You could be beaten by a fellow inmate for stepping out of line or for no reason at all. This betrayal, man turning on man to survive, was one of the most devastating aspects of the camp. And yet, humor found a way to survive. Not joy, there was none of that, but dark humor. We began to laugh at things that outside the camp would have horrified us. A poorly fitting jacket, a guard who barked nonsense, a fellow prisoner who made a clever joke at his own expense. This humor wasn't foolish. It was a weapon. It kept our minds from collapsing. Even in Auschwitz, man retained a flicker of spirit. Memory, too, became a powerful tool. I would often think of my wife, imagining her face, her voice. I didn't know if she was alive, but the image of her kept me going. Others clung to different things, a poem, a prayer, a piece of music remembered from childhood. These small acts of mental preservation were sacred. They reminded us that we were still human, even when everything around us insisted otherwise. The worst moments came not during labor or beatings, but during the waiting. The endless, silent question, would I live another day? You began to notice patterns. A selection meant some would be taken away and not return. Illness meant death. Favor from a capo could mean a longer life. Every moment was a calculation. But the most dangerous thing of all was hope. Specifically, misplaced hope. Some prisoners believed they would be freed by Christmas, others by spring. When those dates passed and no freedom came, something inside them broke. Their bodies gave out. They stopped eating. They died. Not because the camp got worse, but because they had lost their purpose. Without meaning, even a strong body collapses. And that, perhaps, was the most essential truth I discovered in those early days. Survival depended not just on luck or strength or even food, but on meaning. If a man could find a reason to live, even in a place like Auschwitz, he could endure almost anything. That meaning could come from love, from faith, from memory, or from a responsibility not yet fulfilled. But without it, the soul withered. The first phase of camp life, admission, was a test of everything we were. It stripped away names, professions, identities. It crushed illusion. It forced us into a brutal clarity. We were nothing, and we had everything to lose. Yet in that place of total loss, some found a quiet strength, a refusal to be reduced to a number, a will to live, a whisper of purpose, and that was where survival truly began. Phase 2, the period of entrenched camp routine. The initial shock had passed. The disbelief that gripped us during those first days, when men still looked around with stunned eyes searching for reason in the madness, was now gone. In its place came a lifeless resignation. The camp routine had become our reality. It wasn't that we accepted it, we endured it. A kind of emotional frostbite had spread through us. We no longer cried when someone died. We didn't flinch at the screams echoing through the night. The horror had become familiar. Each day began before the sky turned gray, hours before sunrise. The barracks were still dark, the air inside heavy with the stink of unwashed bodies, feces, and rotting wood. A capo or guard would bang on the doors and we'd stumble out of our bunks, those narrow wooden slats packed with several men apiece. Our joints ached from the cold. Most of us hadn't slept properly in weeks. We never had the chance to lie still for long. Lice, hunger, nightmares, and the threat of sudden punishment kept our sleep shallow, disturbed. We lined up outside in the freezing air for roll call. Sometimes it took an hour, sometimes several. If the numbers didn't match the records, we stood there until they did, no matter the weather. If someone had died overnight, their body had to be dragged into formation. Sometimes we propped the corpse up so it would stand, barely, as if the dead could still be counted among the living. Anyone who moved or whispered was struck. We learned quickly not to look anyone in the eye, not to complain, not to stand out. After roll call, we were issued our ration for the day. It was always the same: one piece of bread, often moldy or rock hard, and a cup of watery soup made from rotting vegetables or old turnip peels. That was all. Some men tried to hide bits of food for later, but if caught, they were beaten mercilessly. Still, many took the risk. Hunger twisted our stomachs like fire. Every bite became a negotiation. Eat now and survive today, or save a scrap for tomorrow and risk everything. Then came the work. Every day, no matter how cold or sick we were marched to our assigned labor. Some were taken to construction sites to haul bricks or stones, others to factories or fields. I was once assigned to dig trenches in frozen ground with bare hands. The guards never needed a reason to beat someone. If you stumbled, you were hit. If you moved too slowly, you were hit. If you worked too quickly and drew attention to yourself, you were also hit. There was no winning. One had to move with a certain rhythm. Not too slow to attract suspicion, not too fast to be seen as trying to impress. There were times when the guards seemed to punish simply for sport. I saw a man slapped repeatedly until he collapsed, then kicked for falling. Another was forced to carry a wooden beam endlessly in a circle, collapsing every few steps until he died. And yet, no one intervened. We had learned the hardest truth of camp life. There was no justice here. Survival didn't go to the good, the brave, or the deserving. It went to the lucky, and sometimes the ruthless. The most painful part was not the beatings or the hunger, it was the indifference. The guards treated us not like animals, but like empty things. We were no longer individuals. Our names were gone, replaced by numbers sewn into our uniforms. No one called you doctor or teacher or father. You were just a pair of eyes in a hollow face. And over time, we began to see ourselves that way too. There were days I forgot what I used to look like. There were mornings I couldn't remember my wife's face, and the guilt of that nearly broke me. Yet in this endless cycle of work and punishment, certain small things became lifelines. A kind word whispered when no one was listening, a piece of bread secretly shared, a poem recited from memory. I saw a man draw a picture in the dirt with his finger, nothing more than a tree and a sun. But for that moment, he remembered that beauty once existed. These little sparks were more important than the food we ate. They reminded us that inside the hollow shell of suffering, a soul still burned. Some prisoners adapted by hardening completely. They became machines. They moved when ordered, kept to themselves, showed no emotion. Others lost themselves entirely, talking to voices that weren't there, staring into space for hours. But a few, somehow, retained their humanity. They suffered like the rest of us, but they suffered with dignity. They would help a weaker prisoner to his feet. They would offer their last crumb of bread. These men were rare, and many of them didn't survive long. But their presence was a kind of miracle. We began to think differently. Our priorities shifted. A man who once dreamed of success or romance now dreamed of warm soup and dry socks. A prisoner might give away his last possession for a crust of bread or a spoon. Shoes became currency. A decent pair could mean the difference between work and death. If your shoes had holes, frostbite would come, then infection, then the end. Despite everything, we still clung to memories. We would lie in the bunks at night, telling each other stories of the lives we used to live. One man described the cafe in his town, how the chairs creaked and the coffee smelled. Another recited poetry to himself. I would think of my wife, even though I didn't know if she was alive. I imagined her eyes, her voice, the way she used to laugh at the smallest things. I spoke to her in my head, and sometimes aloud when no one was listening. In doing so, I kept her alive, inside me. I began to understand that the difference between those who survived and those who didn't often came down to one thing: meaning. Not food, not health, not luck, though those mattered. But meaning kept the soul upright. A man who believed he had something to return to, someone to live for, a purpose yet to fulfill, he stood a greater chance of making it through the day. When a man lost his sense of purpose, he changed visibly. His eyes became dull. He began to give away his food. He stopped reacting to beatings. Then, one day, he didn't get up. It didn't matter if he was young or strong. Without meaning, he was already dead. We tried not to think too far ahead. Time in the camp became warped. There was no past, no future, only today. It was dangerous to say, "When I get out of here," because the pain of not getting out could destroy you. Hope, if misplaced, became poison. I saw men who pinned their will to a date: Christmas, their birthday, the end of the war. When that day came and nothing changed, their spirit collapsed. Within days, they were gone. Instead, I tried to focus on the moment. One breath, one step, 1 hour. I observed the world around me as if I were both victim and witness. I studied how others coped. I asked myself what suffering meant, not just mine, but human suffering as a whole. Could it be that even here, especially here, suffering had meaning? Was it possible that pain could be endured, not just survived, but transformed into something else? Something purposeful? That thought became my anchor. Even when the body was broken and the world was ash, the mind still had power. We could not choose our suffering, but we could choose how to face it. That was our last freedom. The guards could beat us, starve us, kill us, but they could not force us to hate. They could not dictate what we believed, what we dreamed, or who we remembered. Inside, we still had a space that no one could touch. As weeks turned to months, the seasons shifted. Winter bit at our skin like knives. The weak died faster. The snow absorbed the blood of the beaten and the dead. Yet every day we marched, we shoveled, we carried stones, we endured. The camp routine became a world of its own. Rules made no sense. Punishment had no logic. Morality was bent. Yet within that chaos, we still found fragments of order. Not from the guards, but from within ourselves. Every man had to find his own way through. Some did it through numbness, others through memory. I did it by asking why. Why this suffering? Why now? What could come from it? I did not know the answers then, but I believed the questions mattered, and that belief kept me alive. Phase 3, the period following liberation. Liberation from the concentration camps was a momentous event, one that prisoners had clung to as a beacon of hope through the darkest years of unimaginable suffering. Yet, the reality of liberation was far more complicated and fraught than many imagined. The opening of the camp gates and the arrival of Allied forces marked the end of physical captivity, but it also ushered in a new phase of struggle and uncertainty. The survivors, broken in body and spirit, were suddenly faced with the daunting challenge of rebuilding their lives amidst the ruins of a shattered world. Liberation was not simply the cessation of suffering. It was the beginning of a profound and painful process of healing and rediscovery. For years, prisoners had been subjected to systematic cruelty. starvation, forced labor, physical and psychological torture, and the constant presence of death. Their bodies were reduced to skeletal frames, emaciated and weakened by disease and malnutrition. Their minds had learned to numb themselves, shutting off feelings of grief, hope, and fear in order to survive day by day. When liberation came, many survivors found themselves unable to grasp the reality of their freedom. Some lay motionless on the cold ground or in overcrowded barracks, too weak to move or even respond. Their faces were hollow, their eyes vacant, reflecting the immense toll exacted on their bodies and souls. The liberating soldiers brought with them vital supplies, food, water, clothing, and medical aid. To the survivors, these were lifelines, tokens of a world that seemed distant and dreamlike after years of deprivation. Yet even these gifts carried dangers. The sudden reintroduction of food into starved bodies often triggered refeeding syndrome, a condition in which metabolic disturbances led to severe complications or death. For many, the instinct to eat was overwhelming, but their bodies were too fragile to process nourishment safely. This cruel paradox underscored the precariousness of survival in the immediate aftermath of liberation. Physically, the survivors faced a long and painful road to recovery. Many were afflicted with diseases such as tuberculosis, typhus, frostbite, and gangrene, ailments contracted or worsened during their imprisonment. Some bore permanent injuries, including amputations and deformities. Medical care, though provided by the liberators and later by humanitarian organizations, was often insufficient in the chaotic post-war environment. Survivors required months or even years of treatment and rehabilitation with no guarantee of full recovery. However, the physical wounds were only the surface of the profound trauma. Psychological scars ran deep and persisted long after liberation. During their imprisonment, many survivors had coped by emotionally shutting down, blocking out overwhelming grief, fear, and despair. The end of captivity allowed these suppressed feelings to resurface, often in overwhelming waves. Survivors were haunted by grief for lost family members and friends, rage at the cruelty inflicted upon them, guilt for having survived when so many perished, and despair about their uncertain futures. Many experienced symptoms now recognized as post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, including nightmares, flashbacks, severe anxiety, and depression. The horrors witnessed, the daily brutality, mass executions, starvation, and dehumanization were etched into their memories with relentless clarity. The mind, though freed from physical confinement, remained trapped by the trauma of the past. Reintegrating into civilian life was a daunting and often painful process. Many survivors had no homes to return to. Their families had been murdered or scattered across continents. Cities and towns lay in ruins, borders had shifted, and political instability was rampant. Returning to one's pre-war life was often impossible, and the survivors found themselves cast adrift in unfamiliar landscapes. Moreover, survivors frequently faced suspicion, indifference, or hostility from their own communities. Despite the end of the war, anti-Semitism and denial of the Holocaust's atrocities persisted in many places. Survivors were sometimes met with coldness or even renewed persecution, compounding their sense of isolation. The silence or rejection they encountered from neighbors, officials, and sometimes family members deepened the wounds of loss and trauma. Survivors' guilt was a pervasive and heavy burden. The question, "Why did I live when so many others died?" haunted countless minds. This guilt was intertwined with a profound sense of responsibility to remember, to bear witness, and to honor the memory of those who perished. Many survivors dedicated their lives to sharing their stories, becoming educators and advocates to ensure the world would never forget. Yet the emotional cost of carrying such memories was immense, often leading to exhaustion and despair. Psychological distress led many survivors into depression, hopelessness, or thoughts of suicide. Some turned to alcohol or drugs as an escape from unbearable pain. Healing was neither immediate nor guaranteed, and many struggled for decades to reclaim a sense of normalcy and peace. The path to recovery required patience, support, and often professional help, resources that were scarce in the chaotic aftermath of the war. Despite these overwhelming challenges, hope endured in the hearts of many. Survivors sought to rebuild shattered lives, reconnect with lost family members, form new communities, and pursue education and work. They found meaning in acts of creation, in nurturing relationships, and in bearing witness to the truth of their experiences. The smallest joys, a warm meal, sunlight on the skin, the sound of laughter, became miracles to be cherished. Liberation also revealed a fundamental truth, that true freedom is more than physical release. It encompasses the freedom to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, no matter how difficult. This realization, central to Viktor Frankl's philosophy, became a source of strength and resilience for survivors. Even when faced with profound suffering, individuals retain the power to find meaning and purpose. In the decades following liberation, survivors bore both the scars and the light of their experiences. They became living testaments to the depths of human cruelty and the heights of human endurance. Their stories educated the world and serve as enduring reminders of the consequences of hatred and intolerance. Liberation was not an endpoint, but a painful beginning, a journey into healing, remembrance, and the reconstruction of life. From the depths of unimaginable suffering, survivors rose, scarred but unbroken. Their ongoing struggle after liberation stands as a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the unyielding quest for meaning, hope, and freedom. Part 2, Logotherapy in a Nutshell. Chapter 1, Logotherapy in a Nutshell. From the depths of unimaginable suffering and the darkest moments of human existence, I developed a philosophy and therapeutic approach centered on one unshakable truth. Life holds meaning under all circumstances, even the most desperate and miserable. This was not a theory conceived in the quiet of an academic study, but a hard-earned insight forged in the brutal reality of Nazi concentration camps. Stripped of all external freedoms, dignity, and possessions, I witnessed how the human spirit could endure only through a powerful inner conviction that life has a purpose worth living for, regardless of suffering. This observation formed the foundation of logotherapy, an approach that places the search for meaning as the central motivation of human life. Logotherapy stands apart from other psychological theories that focus primarily on drives toward pleasure or power. Instead, it posits that what truly sustains us is the will to meaning, a force that drives us to find significance and purpose in our lives. Meaning is not some vague abstraction. It is concrete and specific, often tied to personal goals, relationships, creative endeavors, or even the way we face unavoidable suffering. It is this unique, individualized quest for meaning that ultimately gives shape and substance to human existence. At the heart of logotherapy lies the concept of freedom, not freedom to control all external events, which is often impossible, but freedom of attitude, the last of human freedoms that cannot be taken away. Even when the body is imprisoned, the mind is tormented, and hope seems extinguished, the spirit remains free to choose its stance. It is this capacity for attitude that grants humans their dignity and power. No matter how bleak the situation, we always retain the freedom to decide how we will respond. During my imprisonment, I observed countless examples of this profound truth. Two prisoners in identical conditions could have radically different inner lives based solely on their ability to find meaning. Some surrendered to despair, while others clung to hope rooted in love, future goals, or spiritual faith. This inner freedom was the crucial difference between those who survived and those who perished. A man who visualized a lecture he would one day give, a woman who thought of her child, another who embraced a religious conviction, all drew strength from their unique sources of meaning. Meaning, as I came to understand, is multifaceted and discovered in various ways. It can be found through creating or accomplishing something valuable, work, art, a task that fulfills a purpose. It can be experienced through relationships, love for a person, deep appreciation for beauty or nature. Perhaps most importantly, meaning can arise from the attitude we adopt towards suffering when it cannot be avoided. Choosing courage, dignity, or compassion in the face of pain transforms suffering from a meaningless burden into a human achievement, a testament to the strength of the spirit. Logotherapy views human beings as three-dimensional entities comprising body, mind, and spirit. While physical health and mental well-being are vital, the spiritual dimension is the realm where meaning resides. Even when the body is weakened and the mind afflicted, the spirit, the core self, can remain intact and free, capable of transcending suffering and choosing one's attitude. A pervasive phenomenon I named the existential vacuum reveals the consequences when people lose touch with their personal meaning. This vacuum manifests as feelings of emptiness, boredom, and meaninglessness, which often lead to neurosis, depression, or destructive behavior. It is a silent crisis of modernity, a void that many seek to fill with distractions or addictions, but which only deepens their despair. The cure lies in reconnecting with meaningful values and goals, rediscovering one's purpose amid life's challenges. Logotherapy provides practical tools to aid this rediscovery. Techniques such as paradoxical intention encourage individuals to confront their fears and anxieties with humor or resolve, breaking the cycle of anticipatory dread. De-reflection shifts focus away from obsessive self-absorption toward engagement with meaningful goals or relationships. These methods help liberate individuals from the paralysis of meaninglessness. My own survival in the camps was fueled by visions of a future lecture, the hope of reunion with my beloved wife, and a resolve to bear witness to the horrors endured. These sources of meaning were not mere illusions, but essential lifelines that sustained my spirit when all else was stripped away. Logotherapy is ultimately a philosophy of responsibility. Freedom demands that we own our choices and attitudes. It challenges us to live authentically, to face suffering not as victims, but as agents capable of self-transcendence. This responsibility is both a burden and a gift, the path to true human fulfillment. More than a clinical technique, logotherapy is a guide to living. It offers hope to the despairing, direction to the lost, and strength to the suffering. It insists that no matter the external circumstances, meaning is always accessible. It calls us to discover what makes our lives significant and to embrace it fully, transforming even the darkest trials into opportunities for growth and achievement. Born from the depths of human suffering, logotherapy remains a beacon for all who seek purpose and resilience in the face of life's inevitable hardships. It teaches that meaning is not given but created, that freedom lies in attitude, and that the human spirit can prevail against all odds. Through this truth, we find the strength not only to survive, but to live fully and authentically. Chapter 2: The Existential Vacuum. In my extensive clinical work and through the searing experiences of the concentration camps, I came face to face with a troubling and widespread phenomenon that I termed the existential vacuum. This condition is characterized by an inner emptiness, a pervasive sense of meaninglessness, and a deep boredom with life that afflicts an increasing number of individuals in our modern world. It is not a fleeting sadness or temporary dissatisfaction, but a profound spiritual crisis that strikes at the core of human existence. The existential vacuum is a void where purpose, direction, and genuine engagement with life are lost, leaving people feeling hollow and disconnected. Historically, humans found meaning through clearly defined social roles, religious traditions, cultural values, and close-knit communities. These elements provided an indispensable framework for individuals to situate themselves within a larger whole, creating a sense of belonging and purpose that sustained them through life's challenges. In such contexts, life was imbued with shared narratives that explained suffering, celebrated achievement, and offered visions of the future. Meaning was passed down through generations and reinforced by community rituals and beliefs. However, the rapid social transformations of the 20th century and beyond, marked by secularization, industrialization, urbanization, and technological advancement, have profoundly altered this landscape. The decline of religious faith, the erosion of traditional communities, and the rise of individualism have dismantled many of the pillars that once grounded human existence. The stable, familiar frameworks that gave lives coherence and meaning have fragmented, leaving many individuals without clear guidance or purpose. This loss of traditional anchors is at the heart of the existential vacuum. Without a shared belief system or community values to lean on, people are left to confront the daunting task of finding meaning on their own. This can be an isolating and disorienting experience, especially in a world that offers endless choices but few certainties. The existential vacuum manifests as boredom, not merely a lack of stimulation, but a deep dissatisfaction with existence itself. People feel disconnected from their own lives, as if they are drifting through an endless gray void with no clear reason to engage or hope. The condition of boredom that defines the existential vacuum is insidious. It is not about having too little to do. Often individuals fill their days with activities, distractions, or entertainment precisely to escape this inner emptiness. Yet these superficial engagements are temporary palliatives. They do not address the fundamental lack of meaning at the heart of the vacuum. The more one tries to fill the void with external gratifications, such as material success, fame, or sensory pleasures, the more the inner emptiness can deepen, resulting in frustration, restlessness, and a profound dissatisfaction with life. This state of emptiness can lead to what I have called the neugenic neurosis, a form of psychological distress that arises from existential frustration rather than traditional neurotic conflicts rooted in biological or psychological causes. The symptoms include anxiety, depression, feelings of emptiness, and a loss of motivation. These signs are often misdiagnosed or treated symptomatically without addressing the underlying spiritual cause. The existential vacuum can also provoke destructive behaviors, including substance abuse, aggression, and social withdrawal, as individuals struggle to cope with their inner void. At its core, the existential vacuum is a spiritual malady, a crisis of meaning that demands a spiritual remedy. Unlike physical illnesses, which can be treated with medicine or physical therapy, or psychological disorders rooted in unconscious conflicts, the existential vacuum requires a different approach. It calls for a reawakening of the human spirit through the discovery or rediscovery of purpose and value. This rediscovery cannot be imposed from outside. It must come from within, through a personal journey of reflection, commitment, and engagement with life's deeper questions. The causes of the existential vacuum are multifaceted and complex. The decline of traditional religious faith, which historically provided answers to existential questions and a framework for understanding suffering and purpose, leaves many adrift. At the same time, the fragmentation of communities and the rise of individualism while offering freedom can also produce isolation and a sense of rootlessness. Modern society's emphasis on material success, consumerism, and superficial entertainment often fails to satisfy the deeper human need for meaning and connection. Ironically, the abundance of choice in modern life can exacerbate the problem. When faced with infinite possibilities and no clear guiding values, individuals may feel overwhelmed and paralyzed. The paradox of choice means that freedom can turn into a burden as people struggle to decide what truly matters to them. Without a firm foundation of meaning, they may flit from one pursuit to another, never fully committing or finding satisfaction. In confronting the existential vacuum, it is crucial to understand that meaning is not something abstract or imposed, but something concrete and personal. Each person must discover their unique purpose, which may involve work, relationships, creativity, or a spiritual calling. Meaning is discovered through action, responsibility, and the commitment to values that transcend immediate gratification. It is found in the way we respond to life's challenges, how we love others, and the contributions we make. One of the most profound sources of meaning is the attitude we adopt towards suffering, especially when it is unavoidable. While pain and loss are inevitable parts of life, they need not render existence meaningless. Choosing to face suffering with courage, dignity, and compassion transforms it into a powerful human achievement. This capacity to find meaning in suffering distinguishes humans from other creatures and lies at the heart of spiritual resilience. Overcoming the existential vacuum is not a passive process. It demands active engagement and responsibility. Individuals must confront the void within, ask difficult questions, and make conscious choices about their values and goals. This path is often challenging and requires courage, as it involves facing uncertainty, fear, and sometimes despair. However, it is also the path to authentic living and true fulfillment. Therapeutically, logotherapy addresses the existential vacuum by helping individuals identify and pursue meaningful goals. Techniques such as paradoxical intention and dereflection assist patients in overcoming anxiety and obsessive self-focus, redirecting their attention to what gives life significance. The goal is to empower individuals to reclaim their freedom of will, take responsibility for their attitudes, and engage with life's purpose. The existential vacuum, while a source of suffering, also presents an opportunity. It signals a yearning for meaning and a call to self-transcendence. When embraced, this crisis can become a catalyst for growth, leading individuals to discover depths of strength, creativity, and compassion they might never have realized. The journey through the vacuum is a profound existential awakening, revealing the potential for a life lived with purpose beyond the self. In conclusion, the existential vacuum is a defining challenge of modern humanity, a widespread spiritual emptiness resulting from the loss of traditional sources of meaning and the demands of an increasingly fragmented world. It manifests as boredom, apathy, and psychological distress, but can be overcome through the conscious pursuit of meaning. Logotherapy offers a pathway out of this void, inviting individuals to take responsibility for their lives, embrace their freedom to choose attitudes, and discover unique purposes that bring fulfillment and resilience. Through this process, the human spirit reclaims its dignity and power, transforming emptiness into a meaningful existence. Chapter 3: Logotherapy as a Technique. Logotherapy is not just a philosophical perspective on the meaning of life. It is a hands-on, practical therapeutic method that I developed to help individuals find meaning amidst their struggles, suffering, and confusion. Born out of my personal experiences in the concentration camps and my years of clinical practice, logotherapy offers a path forward for those grappling with despair, emptiness, or psychological distress. Unlike traditional psychotherapies that often delve into past traumas or unconscious drives, logotherapy is future-oriented. It centers on the patient's capacity to discover meaning in their life and to consciously choose attitudes that lead to fulfillment, regardless of external circumstances. At the foundation of logotherapy lies a view of human beings as tridimensional: physical, psychological, and spiritual. While the body and mind are crucial, it is the spiritual dimension where meaning, values, freedom, and responsibility reside. This noetic sphere is the domain of the human spirit and is not diminished by physical illness or mental suffering. Even in the most adverse conditions, the spirit remains intact and free to choose how to respond. Therapy, therefore, engages this spiritual dimension, aiming to awaken a person's will to meaning. One of the most distinctive techniques of logotherapy is paradoxical intention. Many psychological problems, such as anxiety disorders, phobias, and obsessive-compulsive behaviors, are fueled by anticipatory fear. People fear symptoms or situations so much that their fear intensifies the very symptoms they dread. Paradoxical intention works by instructing patients to intentionally engage in the feared behavior or thought, often exaggerating it. For example, a patient with insomnia might be told to try to stay awake as long as possible, rather than struggling to fall asleep. This deliberate reversal removes the pressure and breaks the cycle of anxiety, often leading to relief. By turning fear into humor and deliberate will, the patient gains mastery over symptoms that once controlled them. Another core method is dereflection, which addresses the problem of hyperintention and excessive self-observation. Many patients become overly fixated on their symptoms or anxieties, which ironically increases their intensity. Dereflection involves redirecting attention away from oneself and toward meaningful external goals, relationships, or values. For example, instead of focusing on the fear of public speaking, a person is encouraged to focus on the message they want to deliver or the people they want to reach. This shift from self-centeredness to purposeful engagement diminishes neurotic symptoms and reconnects the individual with life's meaning. Logotherapy also employs a dialogical approach inspired by Socratic questioning. Rather than imposing interpretations or solutions, the therapist acts as a facilitator who guides the patient to reflect on their own values, goals, and sources of meaning. Through carefully crafted questions, the patient is encouraged to explore what truly matters to them, what they want their life to stand for, and how they can take responsibility for their choices. This process respects the patient's autonomy and freedom, emphasizing that meaning cannot be prescribed but must be personally discovered. Unlike some therapeutic models that aim primarily at symptom eradication, logotherapy acknowledges that symptoms can carry existential significance. Psychological distress may reflect a deeper spiritual crisis, a loss or lack of meaning, that the therapist helps the patient to understand and confront. Therefore, therapy aims not only to alleviate symptoms, but to transform the patient's attitude toward their suffering and existence. This transformation enables individuals to endure unavoidable pain with dignity and courage, turning suffering into an opportunity for growth and self-transcendence. Logotherapy recognizes that some forms of suffering and loss cannot be changed or removed. Illness, bereavement, or imprisonment may impose harsh realities, but they do not extinguish the human capacity for meaning. The therapist's role includes helping patients realize that even when external conditions cannot be altered, they retain the freedom to choose their attitudes and find meaning in how they face their situation. This insight often becomes a wellspring of hope and resilience, empowering patients to maintain their humanity in the face of despair. The effectiveness of logotherapy has been demonstrated in diverse clinical settings. It has helped patients struggling with depression, anxiety, addictions, and existential crises to regain purpose and motivation. By focusing on responsibility and meaning, patients often move beyond mere symptom management to a fuller, richer engagement with life. The therapy's flexible and respectful nature allows it to be adapted to individuals' unique situations and cultural backgrounds. Beyond individual therapy, logotherapy's principles have broad applications. In group therapy, education, and even organizational leadership, fostering a sense of meaning enhances well-being, motivation, and cohesion. In a fragmented and often alienating modern world, helping people connect with their deeper purpose can counteract feelings of emptiness and despair, promoting psychological health and social harmony. In essence, logotherapy is an empowering process. It calls individuals to face the realities of life, the joys, sorrows, challenges, and uncertainties, with courage and responsibility. It invites them to discover or create meaning tailored to their unique circumstances, allowing them to live authentically and with dignity. By engaging the spiritual dimension of human existence, logotherapy offers a path that transcends symptom relief, leading to profound personal transformation and a meaningful, resilient life. Chapter 4: The Meaning of Life. The question of what gives life meaning has occupied people for thousands of years. Philosophers, religious thinkers, poets, and ordinary individuals have all wrestled with what makes life worth living. This is not some abstract intellectual problem. It's deeply personal and practical. It shapes how we live day to day, how we survive pain, and how we ultimately face death. From my experience as both a psychiatrist and a survivor of concentration camps, the meaning of life is not a philosophical puzzle, but the very foundation of human existence. Without it, life becomes unbearable. With it, even the worst suffering can be faced. Meaning in life isn't universal or fixed. It's unique to each person, shaped by their situation, values, and choices. There is no one answer that fits everyone. Meaning is found through living. It's concrete, specific, and always changing. It's present in the responsibilities we take on, the relationships we build, the work we do, and the attitude we adopt toward challenges. One truth I learned in the camps is that life has meaning under every condition, even the worst. This wasn't theory, but reality in the face of starvation, disease, and death. Some prisoners survived because they found reasons to endure. One held on to hope of seeing loved ones again. Another was determined to finish a piece of work or leave a legacy. Another carried suffering with dignity. These examples show meaning isn't dependent on circumstances. Meaning is closely tied to responsibility. To live meaningfully means accepting responsibility for your existence and choices. This responsibility isn't forced on you. It arises because you have the freedom to choose how you respond. We can't always control what happens, but we can control our attitude and decisions. This freedom to choose one's path is the last and deepest freedom humans have. With this freedom comes the responsibility to find meaning and live authentically according to it. Meaning is not found in pleasure or power. Many seek happiness or control, but those are fleeting and shallow goals. True meaning comes when we go beyond ourselves, when we commit to causes greater than immediate satisfaction. This might be creating something valuable, caring for others, dedicating ourselves to a vocation, or embracing spiritual beliefs. Self-transcendence is what makes life meaningful. One main way meaning appears is through purposeful work or deeds. Doing something that takes effort, skill, or creativity and contributes to something bigger than ourselves brings fulfillment. Whether it's a scientific discovery, a work of art, teaching, or simply caring for family, meaningful work turns abstract meaning into real experience. Another key source of meaning is love. a deep connection with another person or humanity. Love opens the heart and creates bonds beyond the self. Loving and being loved often provide the greatest meaning, especially during hardship. Love is not just an emotion, but a choice, a commitment to care and stand by another. Through love, life gains depth and richness. Meaning can also be found in how we face suffering. Though suffering is often seen as pointless pain, it can become meaningful when met with courage and dignity. When we cannot change our pain, we still have the freedom to choose our response. This attitude can turn suffering into a human achievement, proof of the spirit's strength. My own survival in the camps shows how finding meaning in suffering can save a life. Meaning isn't always grand or dramatic. Often it's in small daily acts, a kind word, appreciating beauty, or continuing despite difficulty. These small moments add up. The key is being fully present and intentional, finding significance in the here and now. Awareness of death also shapes meaning. Knowing life is finite gives it urgency and purpose. Death doesn't make life meaningless, it makes it poignant. This knowledge pushes us to live deliberately and authentically, to make choices that matter. This realization is both frightening and freeing. It forces us to find meaning before time runs out. Logotherapy, the therapeutic approach I developed, helps people discover their unique meaning through three paths: creative values, what we give to the world through work or deeds; experiential values, what we receive from life in love, beauty, and experience; and attitudinal values, how we respond to unavoidable suffering. These cover the main ways meaning can be found. Creative values mean doing projects or activities that create lasting value. This could be in art, science, service, or any effort benefiting others or advancing a cause. Experiential values come from receiving what life offers: love, friendship, nature's beauty, humor, spiritual moments. These enrich life and connect us to others. Experiencing meaning matters as much as creating it. Attitudinal values are the deepest, especially in suffering or loss. Unlike the other two, they come from the freedom to choose our inner response. Even when everything else is lost, we can still find meaning in how we endure life's unavoidable hardships. Finding meaning isn't passive, it requires active effort, reflection, and responsibility. It often means facing existential questions and uncertainty. But this journey is rewarding. A meaningful life is one of purpose, authenticity, and commitment to values beyond fleeting pleasure. In the end, the meaning of life is deeply personal and universally necessary. It's not abstract theory, but lived reality, through work, love, and courageous attitudes toward suffering. Life has meaning under all conditions. Each person's primary task is to find and embrace that meaning. Doing so gives life value, strength, and fulfillment, turning even the darkest moments into sources of hope. Chapter 5: The Essence of Existence. The essence of existence, the fundamental nature of what it means to be human and to live a meaningful life, is a question that transcends time, culture, and individual circumstance. It is a question that each person must confront at some point in their life, especially when faced with suffering, loss, or profound uncertainty. This question is not merely abstract or theoretical. It strikes at the core of our daily experience and determines how we endure life's hardships, pursue our goals, relate to others, and ultimately, how we confront death. From my decades of work as a psychiatrist and my own brutal experience as a prisoner in Nazi concentration camps, I have come to a profound understanding. The essence of existence lies in a unique human capacity, self-transcendence, and in the freedom and responsibility we exercise in choosing meaning amid life's inevitable suffering and limitations. Humans are not simply biological organisms or psychological machines. We are tri-dimensional beings composed of body, mind, and spirit. The body anchors us to the physical world. The mind governs our thoughts, emotions, and perceptions, but it is the spirit, the noetic dimension, that makes us truly human. This spiritual core is where freedom, conscience, values, meaning, and responsibility reside. It is in the noetic realm that we encounter the deepest questions about our existence. Who am I? Why am I here? What is the purpose of my life? Unlike animals, which live by instinct and conditioned responses, human beings possess the remarkable ability to step outside of themselves, to reflect on their own existence, to ask about its meaning, and to consciously choose how to respond to life's circumstances. This ability to transcend oneself, self-transcendence, is the essence of human existence. It means that we are always oriented towards something beyond immediate biological needs or psychological states. We seek purpose, values, ideals, and relationships that give our lives coherence and direction. The search for meaning is not a luxury or an optional pursuit. It is essential to human life. Without meaning, life becomes empty, unbearable, and devoid of hope. The existential vacuum that many experience in modern society, a profound sense of boredom, emptiness, and meaninglessness, is a manifestation of the loss or absence of this self-transcendence. At the same time, human existence is fundamentally finite. We live with the awareness that our lives are limited, that death is inevitable. This awareness of mortality can provoke deep existential anxiety, a fear and uncertainty about the end of one's existence and the seeming absurdity of life. Yet, paradoxically, this consciousness of finitude also lends life urgency, poignancy, and significance. Knowing that our time is limited challenges us to live authentically, to find or create meaning now rather than postponing it indefinitely. Death is not a negation of life's value, but the boundary condition that gives life its weight and seriousness. The interplay between finitude and freedom defines the essence of existence. While we are bound by limitations beyond our control, our bodies age, our circumstances change, and our time is short, we retain a last and inviolable freedom, the freedom to choose our attitude in any given situation. This freedom to choose one's response, like even when everything else is lost, is the highest human freedom. In the concentration camps, where prisoners were stripped of all external freedoms, dignity, and possessions, I witnessed men who, despite unimaginable suffering, chose to retain their inner freedom by affirming meaning and maintaining hope. No external force could rob them of this spiritual liberty. Freedom, however, is inseparable from responsibility. To be truly free is to be responsible, not only for our actions, but for our entire existence and the meaning we assign to it. Responsibility is not an external burden, but the natural corollary of freedom. Each individual is called to respond to the unique circumstances of their life with deliberate choices that reflect their values and purpose. This responsibility demands courage, honesty, and integrity because it means we cannot blame fate, society, or others for the meaning we create. We own our life and our responses. Existence is not a static fact, but a dynamic process, a continual becoming rather than a fixed being. We are beings in the world who shape ourselves through our choices, commitments, and attitudes. Each decision moves us closer to or further from authentic existence. The essence of existence is thus a lifelong project of self-transcendence, requiring constant effort to rise above our limitations, to find new meaning, and to realize our potential as human beings. Integral to the essence of existence is our relational nature. Humans are inherently social creatures. Much of our meaning emerges from relationships with others, family, friends, communities, and even the broader human family. Love, empathy, compassion, and solidarity are not mere pleasant emotions, but expressions of our deepest being and pathways to transcend self-centeredness. Love, especially, reveals the transcendent dimension of human existence. In loving and being loved, we participate in something greater than ourselves. Relationships ground us, provide context for our purpose, and enrich our lives with shared meaning. Suffering, often seen only as a destructive force, is also an inescapable part of existence and intimately tied to its essence. Life inevitably involves pain, loss, failure, and hardship. How we face suffering, whether with despair and resignation or with courage and meaning, reveals the true strength of the human spirit. When we choose to bear suffering with dignity and to find meaning in it, suffering ceases to be merely a source of despair and becomes a human achievement. This does not diminish the reality of pain, but affirms our freedom and capacity to transcend it. This transformation of suffering into a source of meaning is one of the most profound expressions of human existence. Meaning is not found only in extraordinary or grand achievements, but often in the ordinary and everyday moments of life. It is found in the small acts of kindness, the commitments we uphold, the love we give, and the courage we summon in the face of difficulty. These moments, accumulated over time, create a life of purpose and integrity. The essence of existence is reflected in these concrete expressions, showing that living meaningfully is accessible to all. Furthermore, the awareness of death and finitude challenges us to live deliberately. Death places limits on our time, but also clarifies what truly matters. It is a call to authenticity, compelling us to shed illusions and distractions and to embrace our freedom and responsibility with courage. Living with the consciousness of mortality intensifies our experience of life and motivates us to seek and create lasting meaning. In embracing the essence of existence, we accept freedom as a sacred gift and responsibility as a solemn duty. We commit to self-transcendence as a path toward authentic living, relational connection, and courageous engagement with suffering and mortality. This commitment transforms existence from mere survival into a profound spiritual journey filled with hope, dignity, and fulfillment. In conclusion, the essence of existence lies in the unique human capacity for self-transcendence, the freedom to choose our attitude, and the responsibility to create meaning in a finite life. It involves relationality and love, the courageous confrontation of suffering, and the deliberate embrace of mortality. Through this essence, we realize our highest potential as human beings and transform life's challenges into opportunities for growth and purpose. Understanding and living according to this essence is what allows us to live authentically, to endure adversity, and to face death with peace. Chapter 6: The Super Meaning. Throughout the human experience, the quest for meaning has been both a central concern and a perennial challenge. We find ourselves asking, what is the purpose of life? What ultimate significance does my existence hold? These questions become especially urgent when we confront suffering, loss, or the inevitability of death. Ordinary sources of meaning, career success, family, social status, can falter or vanish altogether, leaving a void that feels like an abyss of meaninglessness. Yet, amidst this void, many individuals discover a deeper layer of meaning, a source of strength and purpose that transcends the changing circumstances of life. This ultimate source I refer to as the super meaning. The super meaning is not merely a grander goal or a more profound value among many. It is an overarching dimension of meaning that grounds all particular meanings. It is the foundation upon which all other meanings rest, an unconditional and eternal reality that gives coherence and significance to life's unfolding story. Unlike the everyday meanings that depend on specific conditions, health, relationships, achievements, the super meaning remains intact regardless of what happens externally. It is impervious to suffering, loss, and even death. My experiences during the Holocaust brought this insight into sharp relief. In the concentration camps, everything that had once given life meaning was stripped away: freedom, family, personal identity, material possessions. Yet, even in that desolation, some prisoners maintained an unbroken connection to something greater, a sense that their lives mattered in an absolute sense. This connection was neither abstract nor passive. It actively sustained them through despair, giving them courage and the will to survive another day. It was the super meaning in action. What distinguishes the super meaning is its mysterious and transcendent nature. It cannot be fully explained, defined, or grasped by human reason alone. It is not a product of human invention or subjective interpretation, but an objective dimension of reality that invites discovery and participation. For many, the super meaning is encountered through spirituality or religious faith, belief in God, the absolute, or a cosmic order that surpasses human understanding. For others, it manifests as a profound sense of connectedness to the universe, humanity, or a transcendent value beyond oneself. This transcendent nature of super meaning means it operates on a different level than ordinary meaning. While everyday meaning is tied to finite temporal aspects of life, the super meaning extends beyond the limits of time and space. It embraces eternity and infinity, offering a horizon that outlasts human mortality. This eternal aspect gives life an ultimate purpose that is not negated by death, but instead illuminated by it. Death, while an end to earthly existence, is not the end of meaning. The super meaning affirms that life's significance transcends physical death, and that what we do and how we live resonates beyond our limited lifespan. The super meaning also possesses the quality of being unconditional. Ordinary meanings are often fragile and contingent, dependent on external factors like health, relationships, or success. When these conditions fail, Ordinary meaning can collapse, leaving despair in their wake, but the super meaning remains unwavering regardless of suffering, misfortune, or loss. It is not earned by achievement nor revoked by failure. This unconditional nature makes it a vital refuge for the human spirit in times of crisis. In the face of the existential vacuum, the deep inner emptiness and boredom that plague so many in modern life, the super meaning offers a remedy. When people lose sight of purpose, when life feels hollow and futile, turning toward the super meaning can fill that void. It provides a stable, enduring source of hope and motivation. It reminds us that despite the transient and sometimes chaotic nature of life, there exists a deeper order and significance that we can trust and participate in. Moreover, the super meaning calls for a response. It is not a passive state of resignation, but an active invitation to live courageously and responsibly. Recognizing the presence of a higher order of meaning demands that we align our lives with it, to act authentically, to uphold values that transcend personal gain, and to face suffering with dignity and purpose. This response requires faith, not blind faith, but a trust grounded in experience, reflection, and the recognition of life's inherent dignity. The role of faith here is crucial. Faith, understood as trust in the super meaning, empowers individuals to endure hardship without succumbing to despair. It is not a simplistic optimism that denies reality, but a profound assurance that meaning persists even in suffering. This trust is often tested by doubt and struggle, yet it remains the cornerstone of a life lived with ultimate purpose. Super meaning also has profound ethical implications. When anchored in this ultimate source of significance, human actions gain a moral dimension that surpasses immediate consequences or self-interest. It inspires us to act with compassion, justice, and integrity, recognizing that our lives participate in a larger, meaningful whole. This ethical orientation, rooted in super meaning, fosters resilience and moral courage, especially in times of crisis. Importantly, embracing the super meaning does not diminish the value of ordinary life. Instead, it elevates daily acts of kindness, work, and love by connecting them to a transcendent reality. Ordinary meaning and super meaning exist in dynamic interplay. The super meaning is the wellspring from which all particular meanings draw their depth and endurance. Recognizing this relationship transforms how we live, infusing even the smallest moments with sacred significance. In practical terms, the awareness of super meaning can reshape how we face suffering, loss, and death. Rather than viewing these as meaningless obstacles, we can see them as part of a meaningful journey. Suffering, while painful, becomes a pathway to growth, compassion, and deeper insight. Death, rather than an absolute end, is a transition within the continuum of meaning. This perspective provides solace and strength to endure what otherwise might crush the spirit. In conclusion, the super meaning represents the highest dimension of human meaning, a transcendent source that grounds life in unconditional, eternal purpose. It is the ultimate foundation that sustains us through suffering, guides moral action, fills the existential vacuum, and connects our finite lives to infinite significance. Recognizing and embracing the super meaning enables us to live authentically, courageously, and with hope, transforming the human condition into a profound spiritual journey. Chapter 7: Life's Transitoriness. Life's transitoriness is the fundamental truth that everything we experience, our bodies, relationships, achievements, and ultimately ourselves, is temporary and will inevitably come to an end. This reality confronts every human being, shaping our understanding of existence and influencing the way we live, suffer, and find meaning. The awareness of life's fleeting nature is both a source of existential anxiety and a powerful call to live authentically and with purpose. From the very beginning, humans sense that their time on Earth is limited. This awareness creates a tension between the desire to hold on to life and the inevitability of loss. It brings into sharp relief the impermanence not only of external circumstances, but of the self itself. The body ages and deteriorates, loved ones pass away, opportunities arise and vanish. Moments slip through our grasp like sand. This constant flux challenges us to find stability and meaning in a world defined by change. Many individuals react to this truth with denial or avoidance. The prospect of death and loss can be so overwhelming that it becomes easier to distract oneself with trivial pursuits, material accumulation, or illusions of permanence. People may attempt to immortalize themselves through fame, legacy, or the continuation of their name and works. While these efforts can provide some comfort, they ultimately cannot overcome the reality that all earthly things are subject to decay. Yet life's transitoriness is not merely a cause of despair. When fully embraced, it can be a profound teacher. Accepting impermanence encourages us to live more deeply in the present moment. It invites us to appreciate the preciousness of time and the beauty of fleeting experiences. This awareness can transform how we relate to ourselves, others, and the world, cultivating gratitude, presence, and a sense of sacredness in everyday life. The transient nature of life also sharpens the question of what truly matters. When we recognize that material possessions, status, and even bodily health are temporary, our attention turns to what endures beyond time. These are the intangible treasures: love, kindness, moral integrity, wisdom, and the meanings we create. They shape the legacy we leave behind, not in monuments or records, but in the hearts and lives of those we touch. Suffering and loss are separable from transitoriness. Pain arises when something beloved fades or disappears. Though painful, suffering can be a profound source of growth and insight. It reveals the depth of our attachments and the fragility of existence, while also inviting resilience and compassion. Facing loss head-on rather than retreating from it allows us to transform suffering into a catalyst for spiritual and emotional development. Death. Death, as the ultimate expression of transitoriness, remains humanity's greatest unknown. It is the boundary that frames life's entire arc. The anticipation of death can evoke fear, anxiety, and existential dread, but it can also inspire courage and authenticity. Consciously facing death urges us to live honestly and deliberately, to prioritize what is truly significant, and to release attachments to the superficial. In cultures and philosophies throughout history, death has been regarded not only as an end, but as a transition, an entry into a different state of being. While the nature of that transition remains a mystery, the possibility encourages reflection on life's meaning beyond mere survival. The recognition of death's inevitability can lead to a spiritual awakening, fostering acceptance, peace, and a sense of connectedness with the larger cycle of existence. The transitory nature of life also affects how we perceive time. Time itself is not infinite, but a series of moments, each passing and never to return. This finiteness intensifies the significance of choice. Every decision carries weight because it shapes how we spend our limited time and contributes to the narrative of our existence. In this way, transitoriness calls us to responsibility and to embrace life fully despite its impermanence. On a practical level, embracing life's transitoriness means cultivating attitudes and habits that honor the present. Mindfulness, gratitude, and presence become essential practices. They help us to savor moments rather than become lost in regrets about the past or anxieties about the future. This approach transforms ordinary experiences into sources of meaning and joy. Furthermore, transitoriness challenges us to deepen our relationships. Knowing that time with loved ones is limited encourages greater openness, forgiveness, and appreciation. It motivates us to build connections that are genuine and meaningful, recognizing that these bonds are among life's most enduring treasures. In the face of life's fleeting nature, it is natural to seek permanence. Yet true permanence is found not in resisting change, but in embracing it. It lies in cultivating inner qualities: love, wisdom, courage that transcend time. It is found in the legacy of values passed on, the impact made on others, and the transformation of suffering into growth. Ultimately, the acceptance of life's transitoriness invites a radical reorientation of how we live. It calls us to relinquish illusions of control and permanence and to engage fully with the present. It asks us to live with humility before the mystery of existence, with courage in the face of death, and with compassion for ourselves and others who share this fragile journey. Through this acceptance, life becomes not a series of losses, but a sacred passage, a brief but precious opportunity to find meaning, express love, and grow in spirit. The fleeting nature of existence thus becomes a source of profound wisdom and inspiration, shaping a life of depth, authenticity, and enduring significance.